If you grew up watching The Addams Family in the 1960s, you probably remember Lurch, the towering deadpan butler who would appear at the ring of a gothic gong with a deep thunderous "you rang." Behind that unforgettable voice and intimidating presence was a very different man, Ted Cassidy, intelligent, gentle, and witty. Ted was the opposite of the spooky roles that made him famous. In this video, we will look into his net worth, abandoned house, and his family. If you are ready, let's do this. Ted Cassidy's net worth. Ted Cassidy wasn't the kind of actor who chased fame or fortune. He was a working actor who took roles seriously, showed up prepared, and let his talent speak louder than any headline. While he became a recognizable face and voice in American pop culture, Cassidy lived and worked during a time when television actors, especially those in character roles, weren't making millions. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, Cassidy built a respectable career. He appeared in well-known TV shows like The Addams Family, Star Trek, I Dream of Jeannie, The Incredible Hulk, and many others. He was in demand for both on-screen performances and voice work, thanks to his deep, unmistakable voice. But back then, actors in ensemble casts didn't earn massive salaries, especially not the kind of recurring residuals actors receive today. The episode paid many TV stars of that era, and once the show was done, so was the paycheck, unless they had unusual contract clauses, which most didn't. For the Addams Family, which ran from 1964 to 1966, Cassidy earned between $500 and $1,000 per episode, standard for a supporting actor. He continued working steadily in guest roles and voiceovers, which would have added to his income, but not in massive amounts. He also did commercial voiceovers and narration work to supplement his earnings. Cassidy wasn't living in poverty, but wasn't rolling in cash either. He was a middle-class actor working in a system where the spotlight and the big paychecks often went to leading stars. By his death in 1979, Ted Cassidy's estimated net worth was likely in the range of $300,000 to $500,000. If we adjust for inflation, that's equivalent to about $1.2 million to $2 million in today's money. It's also important to note that this is an estimate. Cassidy didn't flaunt wealth, and his financial records were never made public. But given his steady career and modest lifestyle, that range is a fair approximation. He didn't own lavish properties or live a tabloid-filled life. He kept things simple. At the time of his death, Cassidy was divorced, but he had 2 children with his ex-wife, Margaret Helen Jessie. One likely thing is that his estate was divided between his children and possibly other family members. There's no public record of disputes or battles over his estate, and no flashy memorabilia auction. His personal belongings, earnings, and assets have been quietly managed and passed on. Now, let's talk about royalties and ongoing earnings. While Cassidy didn't make a fortune during his lifetime, his image and voice continued to generate value long after his death. The Addams Family remains a pop culture phenomenon. The show has been rerun countless times and reimagined in films, animated versions, and even the hit Wednesday series on Netflix. His portrayal of Lurch and his disembodied hand as Thing is still referenced, parodied, and adored by fans. His voice work, especially as the narrator of The Incredible Hulk, continues to be recognized in classic TV circles. Merchandise featuring Cassidy's likeness as Lurch still sells today. However, because of the contracts typical in the 1960s, it's unlikely that his estate will receive significant ongoing royalties. Many actors of that time didn't have deals that included long-term earnings from reruns or merch. That practice became common later as actors fought for better residual rights. The abandoned house mystery. Over the years, Ted Cassidy's legacy has been kept alive by fans of The Addams Family, classic TV buffs, and lovers of old Hollywood. However, along with the nostalgia has come a strange and persistent rumor. Somewhere out there sits an abandoned house that once belonged to Ted Cassidy. It's been the subject of YouTube videos, fan forums, and even urban legend blogs. But is there any truth to it? The origins of the abandoned house rumor are a bit unclear. Sometime in the 2000s and 10s, videos began surfacing online claiming that a large, eerie-looking property, reportedly located in Texas or California, had once been owned by Cassidy. These videos often featured crumbling walls, overgrown yards, and speculation about how the house was empty after he died in 1979. Some claimed it was his final residence. Others suggested it belonged to his family and was left behind after passing. In truth, Ted Cassidy spent most of his professional life in California, near Hollywood. where most of his acting and voiceover work took place. He did live in the Los Angeles area during his time on the Addams Family and other shows. However, there is no verifiable public record tying Cassidy to a property later abandoned or decaying. Property records from Los Angeles County during the 1960s and 70s show that Cassidy owned or rented homes like most working actors. Also, no confirmed property under his name matches the locations cited in the abandoned house videos. Finally, no family member or official biography confirmed that such a house existed. You are probably asking why people believe this tale about an abandoned house. After all, there is often no smoke without fire. The idea of a celebrity's former home being abandoned hits a particular emotional chord. There's something eerie and poetic about a once beloved figure's house falling into ruin, especially someone known for playing gothic characters like Lurch. Also, because Cassidy died relatively young, at age 46, and kept his personal life private, fans are more inclined to fill in the blanks with mystery. People are more likely to speculate if he didn't speak about where he lived or what his last years looked like. In Cassidy's case, his tall, haunting screen presence and association with the Addams Family only add to the spooky tone of the rumor. Early life and upbringing. Theodore Crawford Cassidy was born on the 31st of July, 1932 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to Fred and Ellen Cassidy. Not long after his birth, the family moved to the small town of Philippi, West Virginia, where Ted spent most of his childhood. From the beginning, Ted was different because he stood over 6 feet tall by the age of 11. By adulthood, he had reached 6 feet 9 inches. His unusual growth wasn't just a case of tall genes. Cassidy had acromegaly, a rare hormonal disorder caused by a benign tumor in the pituitary gland, which results in the body producing too much growth hormone. It caused him to grow exceptionally tall and gave him the deep voice and large hands to become part of his on-screen identity. Despite his size, Ted was a quiet, curious, and introspective child. He loved reading, science, and writing, and often preferred books to social events. Though his towering appearance sometimes made him the subject of stares and awkward questions, he was also known to be friendly and well-liked. Ted's intelligence stood out just as much as his height. He graduated from Philippi High School at the age of 11. Yes, you heard that right. He became a prodigy and was accepted into West Virginia Wesleyan College, where he began college education at 14 years old. He played basketball and football there, taking advantage of his height and athletic ability. However, Ted wasn't just the big guy on the court or field. He was academically gifted. After transferring to Stetson University in Florida, he focused on speech and drama, eventually leading him to broadcasting and acting. His booming voice made him perfect for radio work, and his background in drama helped him understand timing, delivery, emotion, and other skills that later boosted his career. It is worth noting that before entering television, he worked as a disc jockey and radio announcer in Dallas, Texas, where he covered serious news stories. Guess what? He was the on-the-ground reporter for the Kennedy assassination coverage in 1963, providing updates for WFAA radio from the scene in Dallas. Also, despite the eerie characters he was cast to play, those who knew Ted described him as thoughtful, funny, and cheerful. He had a dry wit and a self-deprecating sense of humor, often joking about the contrast between his real personality and the characters he portrayed. He was deeply private, as he rarely gave interviews. Unlike his peers, he never courted the Hollywood spotlight. He preferred a low-profile lifestyle and valued intellectual conversations over celebrity parties. Friends and co-workers recalled him as soft-spoken and kind, a man who treated everyone on set, from lead actors to crew, with the same respect. Ted also had a creative side. He wrote music, enjoyed composing, and occasionally penned short pieces for radio. He wasn't just performing other people's words. He had his voice and ideas, which he expressed in quiet, personal ways. Cassidy's physical presence and deep, commanding voice made him a standout even before he found fame. In Dallas, his voice was popular on the radio, and when he moved to Los Angeles, his unique features almost immediately caught the attention of casting directors, the Addams Family, and how Lurch was born. In 1964, Cassidy was cast as Lurch, the gloomy but lovable butler on the Addams Family. The role was originally meant to be silent. How? You may want to know. They pictured that Lurch would just appear, do his butler duties, and disappear into the background. But during one of the early shoots, Cassidy ad-libbed the now popular line, "You rang?" The line, paired with his deadpan expression and booming voice, got a laugh so big that producers reworked the character to give him more screen time and dialogue. Cassidy's version version of Lurch quickly became a pop culture phenomenon. He played the role with a unique mix of creepy charm and comedic timing. Viewers loved the contrast between his Frankenstein-like look and his often gentle demeanor. In interviews, Cassidy admitted he had a complex relationship with his fame. He was grateful for the opportunities, but wary of being reduced to his size or voice. He wanted to be recognized for his talent, intellect, and range, not just his physical traits. This frustration with being stereotyped led him to seek more voiceover and behind-the-scenes work later in his career. Ted also did voiceovers for cartoons, documentaries, and commercials. His narration work was especially praised because he had the voice that made people stop and listen. It was powerful without being overbearing and smooth without losing authority. Also, many fans didn't know that Cassidy played Thing, the disembodied hand that would crawl into scenes to deliver mail or perform tasks. That was his hand you saw popping out of boxes and behind curtains. So, technically, he played two characters in one show. The Addams Family aired from 1964 to 1966, but gained cult status through reruns. It became the role that defined Cassidy's career and established him in television history. Despite his talent and versatility, Cassidy often found himself typecast. Hollywood didn't know what to do with a man of his stature at the time unless the role called for something weird or scary. He was offered many parts that relied solely on his height, alien overlords, villains, and mute henchmen, but he often turned them down if he felt the role lacked substance. This frustration pushed him to seek more creative control. He began writing scripts and working behind the scenes, hoping to one day produce or direct projects that offered richer characters, especially for people who didn't fit the mold. Now you would think he would chase interviews and stir controversies like his colleagues are known to do when they crave attention, but that was far from the case. Despite playing one of the most well-known TV characters of the 1960s, Cassidy never let it get to his head. He rarely attended celebrity parties, gave few interviews, and wasn't interested in becoming a household name. His focus remained on the work and not the fame. By the late 1970s, Cassidy had built a career that stretched across multiple genres, sitcoms, science fiction, voice work, and more. But even decades after the Addams Family ended, Lurch was still a beloved character. Fans still recognized him on the street, and he often responded to a "you rang" with a smile or a playful nod. Private life, wife and children. Behind the towering presence and unforgettable characters, Ted Cassidy lived a surprisingly quiet and private life. For all the attention he received on screen, he kept his world away from the cameras. While many celebrities of his era embraced the spotlight professionally and personally, Ted went in the opposite direction. His family life was a sacred space, as he rarely discussed it in interviews and never used it to promote his career. Ted Cassidy married Margaret Helen Jesse in 1956. That was years before he rose to fame as Lurch. Their marriage predated his Hollywood career, when he was still working in radio and establishing himself as a voice actor. The two met in Texas and built a life together, while Ted was making early steps in broadcasting and acting. Margaret stayed mainly out of the public eye during their relationship. Unlike the spouses of many rising stars, she avoided public events and red carpets, preferring life outside the Hollywood circle. They shared a deep bond in the early years, built on mutual respect and understanding. The couple had two children together, a son and a daughter. Ted adored his children, but as his acting career began to take off in the 1960s, the demands of Hollywood often kept him away from home. Ted's commitment to acting meant spending long hours on sets, traveling for shoots, and diving deep into multiple projects. Between the Addams Family, guest roles on popular shows, and his growing voiceover career, he was constantly working. This intense work schedule took a toll on his marriage. Ted and Margaret eventually divorced in the early 1970s. Both parties never disclosed the exact reasons. All the public knew was that they parted ways amicably. Perhaps because of his quiet nature or his respect for his wife, Ted never spoke negatively about the split. There were no tabloid stories, no public drama, just a quiet separation that showed how he had always approached his personal affairs. While Cassidy's children never stepped into the spotlight, there's no doubt they were important to him. He once mentioned in a rare interview that balancing family and fame was one of the hardest parts of his life. He was proud of his children and valued their privacy above all. Unlike celebrity parents who sometimes encourage their children to enter show business, Cassidy took the opposite approach. He believed in shielding them from the pressures and attention that came with fame. As a result, his kids have lived completely private lives where there's virtually no public information information about them today. Even in an age when it was common for celebrity families to be featured in magazines or interviews, Cassidy kept his personal life entirely off limits. There were no interviews about his home life, no photo shoots with the kids, and no public appearances as a family. He wanted them to have a normal childhood, free from the strange glare of Hollywood fame. Cassidy's children choose to live away from acting, even though they saw many of their peers with famous parents choose careers in showbiz as it would give colossal leverage. They chose different paths. They didn't try to ride on their father's name and fame for public attention or career opportunities. There are no interviews, no memoirs, and no press appearances from them, not even after his death. This total absence from the public eye has sparked curiosity, but it also shows the values Ted instilled in them: humility, privacy, and independence. Even fans searching for details decades after Cassidy's death have found next to nothing about his children. In a world where the children of stars are often automatically famous, the fact that Ted's kids are entirely unknown is rare but admirable. Ted was not known to have remarried after his divorce from Margaret. He stayed single through the rest of his life, or at least there's no public record of another marriage or long-term partner. This has led many to believe he preferred solitude, or that his work and health may have taken up most of his attention in later years. His focus seemed to remain on his career, his children, and maintaining peace in his personal life. Health decline and tragic death. Ted Cassidy may have played towering characters on screen, but behind the camera, he lived with a rare and challenging medical condition called acromegaly. While it contributed to his unique appearance and helped land him roles like Lurch in the Addams Family, it also took a toll on his health and eventually played a part in his early death at less than 50 years old. Acromegaly is a hormonal disorder caused by an excess of growth hormone, usually triggered by a tumor in the pituitary gland. People with acromegaly often develop enlarged hands and feet, facial changes, a deepened voice, and abnormally fast growth, especially if the condition starts in childhood. In Ted Cassidy's case, his acromegaly began early. By the time he was a teenager, he stood over 6 feet 9 inches tall and had hands that became part of his signature look. His booming voice, massive frame, and distinct facial features helped him stand out in Hollywood. Producers and casting directors were quick to take notice. He was unforgettable, but not always cast for the right reasons. While his condition gave him opportunities to play memorable roles, it also typecast him into giant or monster parts, often overshadowing his acting range and intelligence. Despite his physical uniqueness, Ted rarely discussed his condition publicly. In the 1960s and 70s, there was less awareness and sensitivity around medical conditions like acromegaly. Cassidy didn't want pity or special treatment. He simply wanted to work. But acromegaly isn't just a cosmetic condition. It can come with serious health complications, including cardiovascular problems, joint pain and arthritis, fatigue, enlarged organs, increased risk of certain tumors, and other uncomfortable issues. By the mid-1970s, Cassidy's health began to show signs of strain. He was still working, especially in voiceover roles and guest spots on television, but friends and colleagues noticed he seemed tired more often. The energy he had in earlier years was starting to fade. In late 1978, Ted was diagnosed with a non-malignant tumor in his heart. This was ruled as part of the complications from his acromegaly. At the time, it wasn't fully understood how the condition could affect internal organs, but doctors knew surgery was necessary to remove the tumor. He underwent open heart surgery at St. Vincent Medical Center in Los Angeles. The operation initially appeared successful, and for a brief moment there was hope he would recover. But things took a sad turn. On the 16th of January 1979, just days after the surgery, Ted Cassidy died of post-operative complications. Reports confirmed that he passed away due to complications related to the heart procedure, but no foul play or malpractice was suspected. He was just 46 years old. Ted's death came as a shock to many in the entertainment world. While he wasn't an A-list celebrity by Hollywood standards, he was deeply respected in the industry. Directors and producers appreciated his professionalism. Fans adored his unique presence. After his death, there were tributes from fans, and the Addams Family reruns gained popularity. People looked back on his role as Lurch with renewed appreciation, not just for the deadpan humor, but for the humanity he brought to a bizarre character. His family kept things private, which is consistent with how Ted lived. His ex-wife Margaret and their 2 children did not make public appearances or statements at the time, choosing to grieve away from the spotlight. Cassidy himself had always been reserved about his personal life, and his family respected that that even after his passing. Ted Cassidy was laid to rest at Cremation Memorial Gardens in Culver City, California. His grave is modestly fitting for someone who never seemed interested in fame or excess. Unlike many Hollywood figures, Cassidy never chased the limelight. He never relied on scandal, headlines, or attention. His legacy was in his work and the unique warmth he brought to roles that could have easily been one-dimensional. What do you think about Ted Cassidy? Do you think his condition did him a disservice more than it helped his career? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, you should like, share, and subscribe to this channel.